Linda Van Devanter was 21 when she volunteered to go to Vietnam. Fresh out of nursing school, full of purpose, she wanted to save lives while other Americans her age protested the war. They sent her to Pleiku, Pleiku, the 71st Evacuation Hospital, right on the Cambodian border, one of the deadliest combat zones in the entire war. What she found there changed her forever. Helicopter after helicopter, boys, because that's exactly what they were, 18 and 19 years old, with wounds that defied comprehension, legs gone, faces burned beyond recognition, chests torn open by shrapnel. Linda worked 12-hour shifts that became 24-hour marathons. She'd stand in blood-soaked scrubs, holding a dying soldier's hand while surgeons fought to save him, watching the light leave his eyes, then immediately turning to the next stretcher because there were always more. In 1 year, she witnessed more death than most people see in 10 lifetimes. She came home in 1970, and America pretended she'd never left. Male veterans were spat on, called killers, told to forget and move on, but at least people acknowledged they'd been there. Women veterans, they were ghosts. What did you do in Vietnam? I was a nurse. Oh, like MASH? That must have been fun. No one wanted to hear about the teenager who bled out in her arms. No one wanted to know about the nightmares that woke her screaming, the way she'd hit the floor at loud noises, the smell of disinfectant that made her vomit. The VA didn't recognize her. PTSD wasn't officially real yet. And when mysterious illnesses started destroying her body, aching joints, crushing fatigue, her immune system attacking itself, doctors dismissed it as anxiety and women's problems. She was dying from Agent Orange exposure, the same chemical that stripped Vietnamese jungles, now stripping away her life. But no one would listen. So Linda did something revolutionary. She refused to be silent. In 1979, she co-founded the Vietnam Veterans of America Women's Project. For the first time, women veterans had an organization that said, "You were there, you sacrificed, you count." Then in 1983, she published Home Before Morning, the story of an Army nurse in Vietnam. It was the first major book by a woman veteran about the war, brutally honest, unflinching about the gore and the death and the sexual harassment and the way women were used for morale, then erased from history. The book became a bestseller. Suddenly, America couldn't look away. Linda appeared on national television. She testified before Congress. She spoke at schools across the country. She wrote about PTSD in women veterans, about Agent Orange, about how 11,000 women had served in Vietnam, and most Americans never knew they existed. She fought to get women's names on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. She battled for women to receive the same VA benefits as male veterans. She proved that women's service was just as valid, just as sacrificial, just as worthy of honor. And the entire time, she was dying. Systematic collagen vascular disease, her body attacking itself from the inside. She knew it was Agent Orange. She'd breathed it, touched equipment coated in it, eaten food from contaminated soil. But proving the connection meant fighting the government, which didn't want to acknowledge the full scope of Agent Orange damage, especially not in women, because that meant expanding compensation. Even as her body failed, Linda never stopped fighting. The greatest tribute came from thousands of women veterans who wrote to her, called her, stopped her at events to whisper, "Thank you for making them see us." Because that's what Linda Van Devanter did. She made America see. She made them see the nurses who held dying soldiers, the women who served in combat zones, the female veterans who came home shattered and were told they didn't exist. She made them see that PTSD destroys regardless of gender, that Agent Orange poisoned everyone it touched, that 11,000 women served in Vietnam and came home to a country that pretended they hadn't. On November 15th, 2002, Linda Van Devanter died at her home in Arlington, Virginia. She was 55 years old. Vietnam had taken 33 years to kill her, but it killed her just as surely as if she had been shot in Pleiku. At her funeral, hundreds came, women veterans she'd advocated for, soldiers whose lives she'd saved, advocates she'd inspired. They honored a woman who spent her entire adult life serving, first saving soldiers, then saving veterans. The Vietnam War killed 58,000 Americans whose names are carved into the wall, but it also killed thousands more slowly through Agent Orange, through PTSD, through illnesses that took decades to manifest. Linda Van Devanter was one of them. And before she died, she made absolutely certain that women veterans would never again be invisible. Today, when we talk about women in combat, we acknowledge PTSD in female veterans. We recognize that women have always served in America's wars. We owe that legacy to Linda Van Devanter. She didn't just save lives in Vietnam. She saved the dignity, recognition, and benefits of every woman veteran who came after her. She held the line in Pleiku. She held the line for women veterans, and she never surrendered. You were a hero twice, Linda, once in the battlefield and once in the decades of advocacy that followed. And we will never let your story be forgotten. Never forget. Stick around for more. It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.